Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today we're going to be following up on our previous video about Bojack Horseman, the series. And this episode is about Bojack Horseman, the character. So for anyone who doesn't know, Bojack Horseman is a really, really deep show. It's funny, but not in the way that makes you, bust a gut every episode. More in the way that makes you think, I got that, but I'm too sad to laugh. Because it's a sad show. Um, and it's mostly sad because of Bojack. See, Bojack as a character is, well, he's broken. Other characters, in other shows, that they have like a flaw, but they're fundamentally redeemable, right? Like they're good, and you know that when push comes to shove, they'll do the right thing. Bojack isn't like that. Bojack is a terrible person. He's always been a terrible person. The longer the show goes on, the more we find out about how awful and shitty and self-absorbed he is. And there's always some reason, some excuse, oh, I had a shitty childhood, oh, I was drunk, oh, whatever. But it's always a lie, right? Like, sure, he had a shitty childhood, but so did lots of people who didn't end up being like him. And he's made a lot of other people's childhoods worse because of his shittiness. And it sucks. And no matter, like the excuses don't matter, the reasons don't matter. He hurts people. He does the bad thing. He does the wrong thing. Constantly. All the time. He has endless chances to do the right thing, and he almost always misses them. But he always sees himself as being essentially good. Good on the inside, deep down. He always thinks that he can be redeemed, that he can do better, that he's a good person. And because he's the main character of the show, we kind of want him to be a good person. We want him to do the right thing, to turn it around, to be better. But it's not clear that he can, or that it would make a difference if he did. Every season starts off with Bojack being introduced back into his regular life. And throughout the season, we get little hints about some horrible thing that happened in his past. And of course, that's not every episode, There's an episode about Todd, an episode about, Princess Peanut Butter, whatever. Princess Peanut Butter. No. An episode about Princess Caroline, and then an episode about Mr. Peanut Butter. Princess Peanut Butter, that's ridiculous. Cats and dogs don't get along. Anyway, I don't. Anyway, so, but as it pertains to Bojack, we can see him be a side character in someone else's feature story for an episode or two. But most of the time when we see him fall. He does something that at first we think is good, and then it just ends up being selfish. he does something stupid and selfish, and throughout the episode you can see where it's going, and you see, no, no, no. You're not really going to do that, are you? You're not really going to be that dick, are you? And then, in the penultimate episode of the season, Bojack does the worst thing he's done so far in that season. And then he runs away. Sometimes into substances, sometimes he physically runs away. But he always runs. He never stops running. And the season ends with him getting away. And you think, well, maybe this time he's gotten away. Maybe this time he's run far enough and he can change. But then the next season starts and he comes back. And he's still Bojack. You see, he didn't run off with the marathon horses. He just went to a cabin and got drunk and fixed it up and burned it down and came back. Because what else is he going to do? He's always going to come back. Bojack is a monster. He's a tortured soul. And he passes his pain on to others without fail. And he always comes back worse. But we always expect him to get better. Or at least I did. I couldn't help but fall into the trope of, well, every show, that the main character is good. You know, and maybe they do something stupid and ridiculous, especially in sitcoms, but at the end of the day, they're good. And they'll do the right thing. They'll come back. You know? But Bojack isn't like that. He's just bad. Throughout the series, it's hard to keep track of all the people he's ruined. And all the horrible things that have happened to him. Every important character in the series, he's hurt. His best friend Herb, who, you know, lost his job just for being gay. Bojack didn't stand up for him. He could have. It might have worked, but he didn't. Herb was everything. They were partners. They built that show together. And Bojack let him take the fall for something that isn't even bad. When we first get introduced to Bojack, we see him interacting with Todd. And we think that he's, you know, showing kindness by letting Todd stay with him. He even makes a joke implying that he thought Todd was a runaway gay kid and that's why he needed a couch to sleep on. But as the show goes on, you realize that it's not really a kindness that he's showing, and he's really doing it for himself. I mean, for one thing, his house definitely has spare bedrooms. He could let Todd stay in an actual bed, but he doesn't. And for another thing, he won't let Todd go. He doesn't like it when Todd hangs out with Mr. Peanut Butter. He doesn't like it when Todd has a crazy new idea. He doesn't let Todd succeed in anything. Now, sometimes he's helpful to Todd. They do have a solid back and forth, and they are real friends. But Bojack is a shitty friend. You know, he sabotaged Todd's rock opera just because he didn't want to be alone in his big empty house again. He slept with Todd's best friend who, really wanted to sleep with Todd but couldn't because Todd is asexual. And, like, you can kind of understand his reasoning for that, but, like, clearly that's not okay. You know? And I don't know. I mean, they go back and forth. He tries to make up for it. He saves him from that weird, cult of improv cult. Like there's just an improv cult for some reason. And he helps Todd find that other asexual girl from the airport. So, he's not like 100% a dick 100% of the time. But he's pretty damn close. Princess Caroline has just gotten the shaft from Bojack all the time. Both literally and metaphorically. And, the series opens up with their relationship ending, but she still has to work for him. And he still relies on her for all kinds of things that are way outside of her job description. And she pretends to be okay with it because she needs someone to take care of because that's her damage. But he takes advantage of that. He uses her all the time. And she is never able to deal with it as much as she thinks she can. And he never cares about that. He always just takes from her. Mr. Peanut Butter truly, genuinely wants to be Bojack's friend for reasons that I cannot comprehend. He is always happy to see Bojack, always happy to tell stories, always excited. But Mr. Peanut Butter is a child, and Bojack thinks he's above that and refuses to play nice. He's always rude to Mr. Peanut Butter. He's always cruel. He always looks down on him. He always forgets about him. He always takes from him, And maybe from Bojack's perspective, they're sort of like rivals because Mr. Peanut Butter starred in a knockoff version of his show. But Bojack's just a giant douche to Mr. Peanut Butter all the time. And he has no respect for Mr. Peanut Butter at all. He tries to take his girlfriend even after they're married. He's just a dick. Every conversation they have. There's no one big moment to point to, but he's just always the lowest thing on Bojack's list. And Bojack is always rude to him when they speak. And then, of course, there's Diane. God. Poor innocent Diane. When she's introduced in the first season, the show makes it seem like she could genuinely be a love interest for Bojack. And certainly Bojack thinks that. But that's not her role. She's a lot more than that. And she needs someone very different than Bojack. Because the simple fact is, they bring out the worst in each other. All day, every day. And neither of them needs an enabler. Bojack thinks that he can rely on her, that he can trust her, that she can keep him in track, that she can make him better. He always comes to her when he needs to know, am I good enough? But that's not her job. It shouldn't be her job. And really, there's no reason for her to hang around him most of the time. She's involved in the story because she's involved with the other characters. She's Mr. Peanut Butter's husband, or wife. Mr. Peanut Butter is her husband. And, you know, he hangs around Princess Caroline and Bojack and Todd. So she does as well, just sort of by extension. But she doesn't have any reason to be there with Bojack throughout most of the story. But he always finds a way to be near her. And he always tries to make it his problem, her problem, so that she has to talk to him about it. He always goes to her for advice, but he's never really able to offer her any. The one time she came to him truly desperately needing help, he just let her stay on his porch for 3 months and drink beer. Which, I mean, is awful. You need to be better than that. He didn't give her help. He didn't help her get to therapy or anything. He didn't take her home to her husband who would understand and help her deal with the trauma. He just let her wallow in grief. And, I mean, he must have enabled it, because how else would she get all of that alcohol? She wasn't going out to the store on her own. He fueled that. He let that happen because he's a bad friend. And then we get to the other characters who had maybe less screen time but were just as significant. Characters like Penny. You know, all through season 2, Bojack was just losing it, you know. He had that whole falling out with Herb, and he just wasn't dealing with anything well. And for some reason, he thought if he met Penny again, everything would be right. But it wasn't. He just hung out with their family for months for no reason. She was married. She moved on. And then he went to prom with her daughter for some reason. Gave that one girl alcohol poisoning. Now, I mean, you know, that isn't necessarily 100% his fault. I mean, teenagers drink, and if you're the type of person who's going to drink excessively, there's not a whole lot that can stop you. But she got bad alcohol from him, and she was only able to drink excessively because he didn't supervise. And so her getting alcohol poisoning is definitely his fault. It might have happened at some point, but it wouldn't have happened then. I mean, she lived at least, but god damn. And then, you know, he went home with her. And at first, when she came on to him, he did the right thing. He said no. He said no like 3 times. And, you know, he was right. He was right to do that. Like, I mean, legally there was nothing wrong with it. You know, she's above the age of consent. She's asking for it, blah, blah, blah. But, like, she's not old enough to understand that that's not what she wants. You don't want your first time to be with a fucking 50-year-old horseman who's down on his luck and living in your family's house for some reason. That's not what you want in life. Trust me, I know. But he went into the backyard and he kissed the mom. And when she drove him away, somehow she managed to catch him red-handed with the daughter. Even though he rejected her again. He told her, go to bed. But he didn't close the door because he wanted it. As much as we may want to think that he's not so horrible that he would do that, he was totally about to do that. And what a piece of shit, you know? And honestly, that seems like the worst of the end season shockers that we get from Bojack. To me, at least. But there's one every season, and which one you think is the worst is entirely up to you. Then there's the owl girlfriend, whose name I don't remember. She was in a coma for like 20 years before she met him, and he just completely rode that train home. Like, 100% just took advantage of the coma girl and didn't care. And when she finally found someone who was, you know, of the same mindset as she was, he got pissed. He tried to hang on to her, and, you know, like, she was good for him because she was, you know, a good person, and he needs at least one role model, but he wasn't good for her, you know? She was always level-headed and cool, but he always tried to start some sort of drama. And their relationship kind of shows us that Bojack can't just be happy. He has to start fights. He has to have chaos, or it just doesn't feel like home. Which is not a healthy dynamic at all. There were 3 other characters on the show with him, his 3 children. One of them, Sarah Lynn, I'll get back to later. The other one, the other girl, whose name I don't even remember because she gets almost no screen time and is not important at all. And then there's Ethan, who Bojack gets Ethan to financially commit to a spin-off sequel series twice. And both times he destroys the project. The second time he's trying to make up for a previous mistake, and you know, but it just doesn't work. It just can't work. Then there's that um, weird lesbian screenplay director person whose name I also don't remember because who remembers these things? Um, and he ruined her life. You know, she had one shot at a really great career and a really great time, and he ruined it. He convinced her to do something reckless, and she got fired for it, and he didn't stand by her. He had the chance to do for someone else what he didn't do for Herb, and this time it was even more his responsibility, and he still failed. He was still so selfish that he couldn't give up Secretariat. And he had the chance to apologize to her, to make amends in some way. You know, maybe finance a project for her. But he didn't. He never even tried. And yeah. Then there's the talent agent who helped him almost get an award after it hit the Secretariat movie, and who covered up his horribleness from season 2. And he just kind of screwed her over. Like, he forced her to open up to him and start a relationship with him, and it could have worked maybe, but he just left her. He abandoned that relationship because he wasn't able to be emotionally vulnerable the way he demanded her to be emotionally vulnerable. And it was a disaster. Then there's his sister, who he at first thought was his daughter. Yes. And she tries her best to have a decent relationship with him, to interact in a normal way, but he has too many sins. He's done too much damage, and the horrible things he's done follow him. And as much as he wants to be supportive and cool, he's just clingy and creepy. And, well, he ended up creating a hostile environment for her where there should have been peace. And he can't seem to understand why she wouldn't want to see him when he's such a douche. And then there's, well, Sarah Lynn. Sarah Lynn was a little girl who looked up to Bojack as a movie star and as a bit of a father figure. But he and his neglect are the reason that she ended up being so ruined. There was a moment when she needed a father figure, when she needed someone to lean on, to express her emotion with. And all that Bojack could do was try to exploit her fame to continue his career. And it's clear that that betrayal pushed her over the edge. And with no one to keep her in check, no one to give her guidance, she just fell down the hole of substance abuse. And she kept falling down that hole until Bojack found her. At first, when we see them interact, he's trying to get her help. He gets her off the street and tries to, get her into rehab. But that doesn't work. And he ends up just enabling her instead. Finally, he draws the line and tells her she has to go to rehab or get out. And she just leaves. He didn't really help her at all. Then, a little while later, we see them hook up in the middle of a bender. They have a few different benders together because, that's just how Bojack is. He has to be abusing substances or he doesn't, numb the pain. And then one day, she has her shit together. She's been sober for a whole month. And he calls her up and says, "Hey, let's go on a bender. I really need to just be drunk forever." And so she breaks her sobriety for him. And they go on an insane bender. And in the end, she dies. Substance abuse. An overdose. But we don't find out until much later that she didn't die beside Bojack while he was in a fog, as we first thought. No, instead, she was alive. And she only died because he waited to call the paramedics. Because he had to cover his own ass so he wouldn't be caught with her. But if he had taken that bullet, she would be alive. He killed her. He started the bender. He chose to delay help. He killed her. And he never really pays for that. So, in the last season, well, second to last season, we see Bojack go to rehab for realsies. And he really commits to it. He stays in rehab longer than anyone should. And long after the people running the place have given him the all clear to go home 2 or 3 times. He's worried that without the structure of rehab, he'll fall back into his old habits, which isn't an unreasonable fear. A lot of people who exit rehab go right back to using. Addiction is a real struggle. But he's afraid. He doesn't think that he's good enough to hold himself back if it's around, if he has the option. But we get the chance to see that maybe he can. One night, another patient sneaks out to go to a party. He follows her and does his absolute best to keep her out of trouble, make sure she stays sober, etc. But in the end, it just doesn't help. Because sometimes you can't help people just by trying to force them to do what you think is right for them. Then he goes back to the rehab clinic and he realizes that that other patient had put vodka in a water bottle. So he tries to get that water bottle back so that he can discard it. But it accidentally ends up in the hands of the horse therapist, the therapy horse. There's a legal distinction. So the therapy horse drinks all of the vodka and gives up on being sober forever. I think that's maybe unrealistic. I don't know. I've never struggled with addiction, so I don't know if it's really that easy to give up on your sobriety. But, you know, if it is, that's awful. And this one is a little bit complicated because it's not strictly speaking Bojack's fault. Like, he didn't put the vodka there, and he didn't give it to the other horse, and he wasn't, encouraging that horse to drink. In fact, he tried to stop it. But, well, he was involved. And he wasn't able to stop this other horse from spiraling. And when we look at this, when we see this other horse who's been through this same treatment and who has helped Bojack with his treatment, when we see someone who, had been successful for so long just instantly fall back into the pit and nothing could stop it, that's terrifying to Bojack. And he wasn't really able to help. You could tell he kind of wanted to, and he kind of tried, but he could have done more, and he didn't. He ran from that situation the way he runs from everything, because he couldn't handle the guilt. He couldn't handle being the reason that someone else's life had fallen into ruin again. And more importantly, he was scared that he would screw up like that. That he would fall into ruin just as easily as that other horse. And then the final season takes a weird direction. Bojack moves away from Los Angeles. He keeps up with his sobriety and he starts like trying to do something important with his life. He decides to teach acting despite not knowing how to act. I'm sure there's a joke in there about theater teachers, but he gets the job and he ends up doing a really good job and really helping these students understand who they are. He tries to reconnect with his sister, but I already mentioned how bad that goes. And in general, it just seems like he's completely turned his life around. You know, he's sober, he's happy, he's doing good things. He's not living in the same place, doing the same disasters. And then the past catches up with him. Some reporters dig up all of the terrible things he's done and make a report about it. They don't quite frame it in the correct way, you know. They try to make it all like sexist instead of just pointing to him and being like, yeah, he's a piece of shit. Which I don't think you really need to make it sexist. Like, he's a piece of shit. That's enough. But anyway. And instead of just sort of taking this as is and moving on, he has to go on the defensive. He has to go out there and make a statement. And he doesn't really apologize. He doesn't really make it right. He just says some things, some empty, hollow words, and moves on. But the reporter doesn't let him just move on. They do another piece, and she really, really comes at him. And he breaks. And he spills the beans. And he just loses it. And then he runs away again. Like he always does. In season 11, in the second to last episode, which normally is episode 11, but this season actually has more episodes in it, so whatever. In the second to last episode of the final season, he tries to drown himself. He breaks his sobriety, he breaks into his old house, which is no longer his because of money stuff, and he calls Diane, and he makes it her problem again, even though she's moved on. She's not even in Hollywood anymore. She's living a good, happy life with a good guy somewhere far away. And he makes it her problem again. And then he drowns himself. And we spend the rest of the episode watching him die. Watching him subconsciously chase after Diane as if she's the only good thing in his life. And watching him throw himself a pity party about his past. And I wish the season would have ended on that episode. I wish that could have been the final episode of the series. Because Bojack doesn't change. We thought he could change. We thought he could move on and do better, give back. But he just couldn't. He couldn't escape his past, no matter how much he ran. And he couldn't accept his past because he was too busy trying to run. And when he survives, he goes to prison. So that's something. Consequences, I guess. But he's just... It's just the same ending as all the other seasons. Right? Like, maybe there's some hope that this time, finally, he's good for good. But we've seen this pattern too many times. Last time he was able to keep it up for a whole year, and yet he still just collapsed and destroyed everything, and here he is. And honestly, I just want that cycle to be broken. I don't want to live with the endless thought of, is he actually going to do any better, or is he just going to fail again? And I know Bojack doesn't want that. The final episode of the series is Princess Caroline's wedding to Judo. Judah? I'm not sure. Bojack gets a day pass from prison so that he can go to the big event. And we see him talking to all of the important characters from his past who are still alive. And he has a nice moment with each of them. But one nice moment doesn't change a person. It doesn't make up for all of the terrible things he's done. And it doesn't really show me that he's not going to do more things like that in the future. And yeah, it's just a real bummer. I just don't think that Bojack is redeemable as a person. And the worst part is, Bojack isn't fake. Like, yeah, Bojack the horsehead man is a not real person, but people like him exist. And we have to wonder, is there something we can do for people like that? Is there a way to fix the problem? Or is the person just gonna go around in circles? Is there something that can push them out of the circle? And if so, what? Does it depend on the person? You know, and I mean, like, Bojack has all of the things that you might normally think of as getting people out of that cycle. You know, he has resources, he has, you know, friends, he's got rehab, you know, he's got places to go to get away from the toxic community he sometimes is in. You know, he's got ways to isolate himself from his substance abuse. He's got every possible advantage, and he still fails. He still falls off the wagon. He still manages to not be good enough sometimes. And And it just makes you wonder if there's any hope. Makes you wonder if you're good enough. If you'll ever be as good a person as you want to be. Or if you'll always just circle the drain. Bojack Horseman makes me hate myself. It makes me hate humanity. It makes me sad. I'm not like Bojack. You know, as far as I know, I've never gone out of my way to ruin someone's life before. But there are lots of things about me that I would like to be better, that I would like to improve. And I just don't ever seem to make strides, you know? And looking at this story, looking at this character, I can't help but wonder if maybe I'm just doomed to always have those flaws. Of course, on a fundamental level, I don't believe that. Like, this show isn't strong enough to convince me that life has predetermination or that your flaws are always going to be there. Nah. I mean, you'll always have some flaws, sure, but, you know, you can always work on yourself. I truly believe that you can always work on yourself and you can always improve. And maybe you won't always be able to do everything you want. You know, you can't fix everything all at once. But you can fix one thing. And then when that's solved, you can fix another one thing. And then another, and then another. Until you are the person you want to be. At least that's what I think. I don't think that we're all doomed to circle the drain like Bojack. I think that once we fix enough things, we can be the people we want to be. And I think that Bojack can be the person he wants to be. You know, he got sober. He lived a whole year doing something completely unrelated to his horrible past. And yeah, he fell off the wagon for a bit and went a little crazy. But now he's in a better place. And he spent another year sober. And he's giving back to the community again. And he's reconnecting with friends. And, you know, he can be okay again. We can all be okay in the end. At least, if we try. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you have any things to say about it, leave those in the comment section. If you like the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, share the video, tell your friends, start a cult, sacrifice your firstborn and paint their skull golden. I don't know, not that last bit. No human sacrifices. I'm legally liable. No. None of that shit. But, you know, I got Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. I stream on Mondays. I also have a Patreon, but the obvious caveat with Patreon is you never donate to anyone unless you have money to burn. And if you have money to burn, then why not donate to a charity instead? I've got a few linked in my description at all times. I'm not affiliated with any of them, obviously, but yeah, I just thought they were cool, so, you know. Thanks for watching.